Welcome back to the weekend with Anthony Opperman. Just got through talking about my travels through Baton Rouge and Tuscaloosa. I'm away home and back from Christmas. Really interesting perspectives in each city. And in order to kind of dive into it a little bit more, I decided to bring in somebody who's got even more expertise and could talk a little bit more in depth about the build-up to the big matchup between Alabama and LSU this coming Monday. Formerly of WDBJ7 in Roanoke, now with WIAT CBS 42 in Birmingham. I'd like to welcome in Lauren Sisler. Lauren, thank you so much for taking the time.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this big game. I mean, the hype, like you said, it's there. I mean, we're all excited about it, and the wait is almost over.
Lauren, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the atmosphere down there in Alabama, getting ready for the game on Monday. You guys are about 60 miles away from Tuscaloosa there in Birmingham. I guess first and foremost, for Richmonders who may not know, can you describe how big of a deal Crimson Tide football is to the people in Alabama?
Well, I kind of put it in these terms. As you've probably heard, the state of Alabama being referred to as the Bible Belt here. And I could tell you that Alabama football falls into that religion. It's unbelievable. You know, people said before I moved here, get ready, it's SEC football, get ready for this. You're going to see something completely different. And 100%, this football is the sport here in the state of Alabama, no doubt about it. I mean, absolutely 100% people live, eat, and breathe this sport. Funny because 365 days a year, that's what this revolves around, you know. And as football season is winding down, everybody's talking about recruiting, everybody's talking about next year. So I think that it never really stops here in the state of Alabama.
Interesting perspective. Some people talk nationally about the fact that maybe they didn't want to see a rematch between Alabama and LSU. And when you got down to the final BCS polls and rankings, it was pretty close between Bama and Oklahoma State at the end. But from what I've heard, and again, driving through and listening to some local sports talk radio coming out of Birmingham, it really seems like the fans there feel very, very strongly this was a no-brainer matchup between LSU and Alabama for the national championship.
You know, and I would agree with that. You know, I think people here in the state of Alabama take pride in the fact that their school and their state is being represented now 3 years in a row in this national championship game. And I think that, you know, people without a doubt thought they belonged there. I think when the standings came out, you know, once Oklahoma State was once again kind of back in the running, you know, after the Iron Bowl, we had a long wait. I mean, it was a long wait before we were going to find out if Alabama was going to the national championship. And it certainly had people on edge and all these games and people getting knocked off and all these variables going into it. And, of course, everybody questions the BCS point system and everybody questions, you know, is this the way it is? And, of course, when you ask Nick Saban, I mean, he'll tell you the same thing. You know, they're there. They deserve to be there. LSU feels the same way. They admitted after the regular season game when Alabama lost to them 3 points in overtime there, you know, they were looking forward to a rematch with Alabama, but they said that it's going to be tough to beat them twice, and I can agree with that. I mean, I think this is going to be an intense matchup, and again, like we said before, I don't think it's going to be a 9-6 ball game. I think hopefully we'll see a little more work in the end zone.
Again, Lauren Sisler from WIAT CBS 42 in Birmingham joined us here on the weekend with Anthony Opperman. And Lauren, I want to get to Nick Saban in just a second, but earlier you brought up Auburn and how there's been an Alabama team now representing the BCS championship game 3 years in a row. It's a big rivalry between Alabama and Auburn, and maybe something we could talk about on another show another day. But how are Auburn fans feeling about Alabama having a shot at a national championship this year after they made their run with Cam Newton last year?
Well, you know, and I think there's mixed emotions coming from them. You know, again, you have your fans that despise the Tide regardless. I mean, no matter how you shake it, anything the Tide does well, they're not happy about. Then you have others that, of course, like I said before, take pride in the state of Alabama, and they look at this as a chance for the state to capture 3 titles in 3 years, which is, you know, pretty remarkable. And it's funny, too, because like any state, you've got a lot of split families here, and I've been talking to fans and people that have graduates of Alabama and Auburn in their family, and people traveling to the game that are pulling for Alabama because of the fact that, you know, when you're from the state, chances are, you know, you're not going to be a big LSU fan, and you have people that, again, have split emotions about this. But I think at the end of the day, it's kind of like the Redskins and Cowboys when you're comparing two teams. You know, who are you going to pick? I mean, it's either it's a love-hate relationship. So, especially with LSU, a lot of people that are from the state of Alabama not going to be big LSU fans. So, at the end of the day, I think regardless if you're an Auburn fan, I think that you're going to pull for your state, and that seems to be the consensus here.
You know, you bring up the fact that coming from Alabama, there are not a lot of LSU fans. But is there a mutual respect there? Because it kind of seems, just at least listening to the two teams talk about one another, that they certainly feel like that matchup earlier in the season that LSU ended up winning in overtime was truly a matchup between the top two teams. It seems like the teams truly respect one another. Is that kind of the way the fan base feels about it as well?
Yeah, you know, I think these teams, they came out, I mean, it was on November 5th at that game. I mean, it was unbelievable. You know, of course, it was as slugged as the game of the century, Armageddon. And I think, you know, the fans, when they came out, I mean, it was unbelievable, the difference in some of the previous games. And then you walk out on the streets at Alabama and the amount of fans that were there from both fan bases. And, I mean, I think they set upwards of 20,000 people without tickets that were just planning on being outside, enjoying the festivities, you know, enjoying all the hype and everything that goes into the game. And I definitely think there's certainly a respect there from both teams. And again, I think that LSU has made it very clear that Alabama deserves to be there. And, you know, you got your naysayers that if Oklahoma State would be there, but once again, then the people are going to argue they lost to Iowa State in the regular season, and the only thing that stands between Alabama and LSU is 3 points in overtime, strength of schedule. There's so many things that go into it, and the reason we have this BCS system is there for a reason. And so, really, I mean, at this point, you can't argue it, so you have to accept it, and I think that both Alabama and LSU fans have accepted this and are just ready to get the show on the road.
And joined by Lawrence Sisler with WIAT CBS 42 in Birmingham. And, you know, the one common thread that both Alabama and LSU share is Alabama's head coach, Nick Saban. You know, he comes across as a real down-to-business guy. He comes across as kind of a guy that, I'll be quite honest, I wouldn't want to tick him off because he seems like he could really put you in your place if he did. What's it like attending a Nick Saban press conference?
Well, I'll tell you this. It is very interesting. You never know what you're going to get. You kind of walk in Monday morning, you get set up, and, you know, you wonder which Nick Saban you're going to get. It's always an interesting time when he comes in the room. Everybody gets ready for him, and, you know, I'd say the print writers are always the best at asking questions. They're the ones that usually kind of jump up and ask these questions because they kind of know in their mind what story they're looking at, what angle they're looking at. Well, Coach Saban reads right into that, and it's funny because when they ask certain questions, you know, they get some very interesting responses. Anything that is a theoretical, coulda, shoulda, woulda, Nick Saban doesn't want to talk about it. And, you know, he'll make it very clear. And I remember, I don't know if you folks remember out there, the press conference that he had when he flew off the handle and used a profanity on the air during I guess it was after the LSU game. And it was kind of about the SEC and Missouri coming in and the conference shift and whether or not they'd be playing, you know, Tennessee in the future. And it was, again, a theoretical question, and he wasn't thrilled about the idea of being asked that question. And, of course, it was just the response, as everybody saw, was pretty guarded. And I had to ask a question after that. So I had to kind of prepare myself and brace myself. And I actually wrote the question on a piece of paper to be sure that I asked it properly and did not mess up on one or two words that would have given him a reason to, I guess, lash out at me.
I was just about to ask you, as a new reporter to the market, a young reporter to the market, I mean, is it intimidating to step into an environment like that and then still have to ask these questions and potentially knowing that this may be one that might hit a nerve?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I always use this, and I've told people here in Alabama, I covered West Virginia previously, and before that I was covering Virginia Tech. And Frank Beamer, very easy to work with in the media. He's, very friendly. He always comes out and greets the media after his press conferences. Just a very easy guy to talk to. Coach Saban, on the other hand, not saying he's not an easy guy to talk to, but he's business, and that's what he cares about. He cares about his team, his players, and the difference, the atmosphere, the way he runs things, everything has to be on time. And it's funny, he's got somebody there beside him taking notes as to who says what and who asks what, because he remembers. And so you don't want to be that person that asks that question that upsets him for the future as well. And, you have some beat writers that as soon as they ask for the mic and ask a question, that you're going to get a pretty interesting response from Coach Saban.
That's good stuff. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we like to talk about on this show, just because those are the kinds of things that as a fan you don't get to experience, you don't get to see. Now, maybe you get to see the chopped up press conference on SportsCenter, but you're not actually there in the room feeling the feelings and then having to actually perform your job. So I appreciate you sharing those insights.
And I will add one more thing with Coach Saban, too, the personality. And, again, I mean, he is all business, but it is funny because he will try to interject things that kind of set the mood a little bit. He wants people to laugh at him. He kind of, waits for people. And we had actually at the end of the year, we ran a year-end Coach Saban best quotes of the year, and it was quite interesting just going back and listening to some of the quotes. And I had kind of a notebook, and I would star funny moments and things that he said. And it was funny because he talked about Santa Claus, and he always referred baseball. Baseball was always a big analogy for him. He grew up playing baseball, and that was a big sport for him. And it's just very cool that though he is business, that sometimes you can always rely on a good laugh from him somewhere along the road. And so it's you do see a little bit of a different side of Coach Saban at times.
You're joined by Lawrence Sisler from WIAT CBS 42 in Birmingham, talking about the big matchup between Alabama and LSU, certainly from the Alabama perspective. And Lauren, before I let you go, as you've made mention too many times, everybody there certainly ready to get this game kicked off on Monday. It's been such a long wait since the end of November. Any big plans there in the Birmingham, Tuscaloosa area? I mean, obviously the Superdome is going to be jam-packed on Monday night. It's going to be really tough for anybody to score any kind of a ticket to actually be in the game. But any plans there locally, big watching parties?
At this point, I think everybody's just, like you said, fired up and people making their plans, finalizing their plans, and those that aren't going, it's funny because we have our crews down there and everybody, I can't wait to get down there, and everybody's all fired up. But those that can't go, that don't have, the money or tickets to get down there, there's certainly a lot going on here, a lot of viewing parties, as you said. Everywhere's already, talking about, making reservations and coming in, and they've got advertisements everywhere for, the game being watched, and, prizes and all sorts of things going on as far as that's concerned. And it's just funny because I was at the restaurant last night, and we had a guy, or one of our waiters came up to us and said, I'm going to go down there with $600 in my pocket and see if I can get a ticket. But I think we all know he'd probably be better off just going to sit at a bar on Bourbon Street and watching it from that angle.
Well, Lauren, definitely thank you so much for taking the time this morning to chat. One of the fun things about working in the media industry, and certainly for me as well, the baseball industry, is the people that you get to meet along the way. Of course, you and I had the opportunity to get to know one another a little bit all the way back in 2007 in the Carolina League when you were down in the Roanoke Valley. So definitely appreciate it. Corned beef's isn't the same without you.
Hey, I appreciate it. I really appreciate you thinking about me. We're having a good time here, and I guess everybody else around the country will hopefully get a good ball game. Lawrence
Sisler from WIAT CBS 42 in Birmingham. We're going to change pace a little bit. When we come back, we've got our wildlife segment with Chris Donovan for the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries. Stay tuned to The Weekend on Sports Radio 910.
The Weekend with Anthony Opperman continues next on Sports Radio 910.